Did you and the First Lady have a nice birthday dinner on the boat?
We had a great dinner. She's a great First Lady. People loved her. And the funeral was beautiful. It was a beautiful funeral. As funerals go, it was a beautiful funeral.
The task force on declassification of federal secrets will come to order.
A freshly launched Oversight Committee task force led by Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna is assigned to unmasking holdouts who defied Trump's first-term directives and blocked release of thousands of JFK documents.
So our task force is, trying to reach out and question the bureaucrats, figure out which bureaucrat didn't comply with the orders. Same thing happened with the Epstein files when Pam Bondi thought she was releasing the Epstein files. It really wasn't the Epstein files, obviously.
You're looking at these documents going, these aren't all the Epstein files. You know, there were flight logs, there were names and victims' names, and we're going, where's the rest of the stuff?
So that task force is kind of working on very hard behind the scenes to identify which bureaucracies and which bureaucrats are not complying with the president's orders. I heard that 10,000 times over the past 2 years. Well, we can't turn that over. There's an ongoing investigation. We're hearing that with the Epstein files now in this administration. So
who's telling you that?
Well, that's what when we request information, if they don't provide it, that's what they say. There's an ongoing investigation.
Some liaison to Congress tells you that?
Well, whoever replies to our letter or subpoena, that's what they say. There's an ongoing investigation.
So even now they're citing that for Epstein?
We've been real careful to try to let some of these cabinet officials get established and things like that. The task force has asked for the Epstein list and things like that, and that's been the reply thus far, but they still say we're going to release it. We're in the process of releasing it. We've just got to make sure nothing is released that compromises the ongoing investigation.
Do you think we now have all the JFK files, or they're in the process of being posted and so on?
Well, I would say that we've probably gotten pretty much what we're going to get. The question I have is, were there documents that have disappeared over the last 4 decades, and that's probably a possibility. I find it hard to believe that if the government was involved in some type of role in the Kennedy assassination, that they would say, okay, let's keep this file in this safe here, and I would think that file would disappear very quickly.
Well, I've said much the same about the Epstein files. Certainly if there are bad actors, they weren't holding the documents under a glass dome waiting for Trump to be reelected so that they could be released.
The thing that worries me about the Epstein files, and I've read a lot about it, like most Americans have, is was our government involved in this? Were they potentially blackmailing some of the most influential people in the United States or in the world? If you go into, Britain and other countries where we know there were very high-profile people that were going to the Epstein Island or whatever you want to call it. And if that was the case, I find it hard to believe that any type of evidence of that would still be in existence.
Including videos.
Including videos.
We know there were videos.
And, I think at the very least, there are 2 questions most Americans have. Who was on the list, and did our government, play any role in evaluating that or spying on that, or were they involved in any type of, blackmail attempts or anything to get information? Enough time has passed, but we're still battling that battle.
Beyond just prying open.
The great Congresswoman mentioned the Civil Rights Act of 64, Voting Rights Act of 65, Fair Housing Act of 68. How did those things happen? Do you think we got here because a bunch of senators over there one day got together on the Senate floor and Strom Thurmond pulled everybody together and said, I've seen the light. Let those Negro people have the right to vote. That's not how it happened. Do you think we got suffrage in America? The right to vote for women because a bunch of men on the House floor got together and said, hey, fellas, put it in right here, okay, on the count of 3. On the count of 3, women get the right to vote. Ready, 1, 2, 3, wait. No, that's not how it happened. What happened first before Obergefell? And they actually decided to let people marry who they love. Did it happen at the Supreme Court first? Or did it start at Stonewall? Did it start with Harvey Milk? We've got to remember how we got here, from Selma to Seneca Falls. We are here because of the power of the people. Change does not come from Washington. It comes to Washington. Power concedes nothing without a demand. Without a demand. And so we came out here today to start with our grounding, our foundation. Below these buildings, constructed, some of it with slave labor. The bedrock of our nation is not the people who are presidents or vice presidents or senators or congresspeople. The bedrock of this nation was seen in those dark days, hiding out in barns, when black folk and white folk got together and plotted the greatest infrastructure project America has ever known, the Underground Railroad. We got here because of individual Americans, like a little girl named Ruby Bridges, that when all the forces of hate were allied against her, she still stood up and said, I deserve the right to a free public education.
So we know there's trouble. The Apostle Paul writes in 2 Corinthians, the 4th chapter, that's 2 Corinthians, not 2 Corinthians. If you're going to sell the Bible, you should know the Bible.
Wow. Wow.
If you're going to sell the Bible, you should know the Bible.
Nothing about what's going on right now is unprecedented. Everything is precedented. And then he started giving me a tour de force of other moral moments in America. Crises that we had, from the Civil War to the Great Depression, to Nazis rallying in Madison Square Garden, filling it up, to a military general in the Depression saying we need an authoritarian takeover for our country. Just a little bit until we usher through this period. He told me about Father Conklin, not just the #1 radio show in America, but the majority of Americans listened to him with his anti-Semitic screeds. He took a whole swath of American history, all of these moments where we were at a crossroads and it was a moral moment. And then he asked me what had us at those crossroads choosing the right direction. And I paused and didn't answer. He goes, well, let me tell you. It was not the person in the White House. It was not the people in Congress, the Senate or the House. Every time our country came to a moral crossroads, it was the soul of America, the conscience of the people, the action and the activism. Whether it was the Vietnam War, or the Civil Rights Movement, or the suffrage movement, or the abolitionist movement, or the labor movement, or the LGBTQ movement, every time it was the power of the people. In a moral moment, people stood up. In a moral moment, people spoke up. In a moral moment, people rose up and said, this is my country. It is we the people. We the people. We're going to stand up. We're going to stand up. We're going to stand up. We are in a moral moment now. This is that moment. This is that time. It's not the Congress. It's not the president. It's not the Supreme Court. This is our country. This is our nation. And it's time for us to let them know that the people united will never be defeated.
In his very first sermon, Jesus said he came to preach good news to the poor. And so when I hear Christian folk talk so badly about immigrants, when most immigrants do not commit crimes, most immigrants do not live on the dole of our government, most immigrants look nothing like Elon Musk. When I hear people beat up on the stranger, the Bible has a lot to say about how you treat the stranger. When I hear people attack poor people and act like it's a crime to be poor rather than to recognize that it is criminal for so many people to be poor. And they do all of this in the name of the one in whom I preach and believe every Sunday. Can I tell you something? Jesus is the biggest victim of identity theft in the United States of America.
And it doesn't feel that way anymore. We can't quite see the light at the end of the tunnel. We don't know that if we do all the things we think we need to do, that change will come. But as we sit here on the steps of a part of this Capitol that was built just before the Civil War, as I join with my colleagues on the floor of the House of Representatives, where they passed the 13th Amendment and the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, where women got the right to vote, where the New Deal was passed, where Medicaid and Medicare were created, as we sit in the chairs where people sat when they voted to pass the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, and as we step into the shoes of not only our predecessors, but the advocates, activists, and everyday Americans in those moments who fought for that change. When you step out of the hindsight of history that views that change as inevitable, you cannot tell me that the reasons for hopelessness now are greater than the reasons for hopelessness then. An enslaved person in the 1850s had no reason to believe that an Emancipation Proclamation was on the horizon. Unemployed workers during the early days of the Great Depression had never heard of a New Deal. Patrons at the Stonewall Inn never knew of an America where they could live openly and authentically as themselves without violating the law. They had every reason to give up hope. They had every reason to believe that change would not come. They could not see the light at the end of the tunnel. But they persevered. They summoned their hope, they found the light, and they changed the world. And I am hopeful that if we persevere, if we summon our hope, then we will find the light and we will turn this moment into what a friend from Florida once called a slingshot moment, where yes, we are pulled backwards, but the tension and pressure of being pulled backwards ultimately propels us to destinations that we've not yet been. Thank you all very much.
Plenty of problems in the world. You know, when I left 4.5 years ago, I left, and I'll tell you what, we didn't have any of these problems. The good news is costs are way down, groceries are down, eggs are down, gasoline is way down. It's all coming down. It's all looking good. The tariffs are strong. We're taking in a lot of money from tariffs. We were losing a lot before I got here. We were losing billions of dollars a day, and now we're doing great, and we haven't even kicked in yet. And eventually we'll be reducing taxes very substantially for the people of our country, because the money is so great coming in from tariffs that I'll be able to reduce taxes to a very large extent, and maybe almost completely. And we're going to make a lot of money, and we're going to cut taxes for the people of this country. It'll take a little while before we do that, but we're going to be cutting taxes, and it's possible we'll do a complete tax cut, because I think the tariffs will be enough to cut all of the income tax. Now, we have a lot of debt that's been left to us, unfortunately, over many years. We'll take care of that, but the tariffs, if people only understood the tariffs, we're going to be giving people of this country a tremendous tax cut. And we're going to start with people making less than $200,000 a year.
Keep saying 2 weeks about President Putin. What is 2 weeks? Give us, what is the actual date? What is the timeline?
2 weeks or less, and if it's a little more at the time, I say, but, they're losing a lot of people. This is Biden's war. This isn't Trump's war. I came in to try and solve a problem, and the problem is so many people are being killed. By the way, Saquon, what a great guy.
Sir, can I ask
you? See the conditioning. His conditioning's pretty good. Better than you, better than me.
Is your relationship with President Zelensky better now than things were in the Oval Office?
It was never bad. We had a little dispute because I disagreed with something he said, and the cameras were rolling, and that was okay with me. But we had a dispute. But look, he's in a tough situation. A very tough situation. He's been fighting a much bigger force. Much bigger. And that force has not been very distinguished. You know, it's been a lot tougher than they thought. But it helped them when we gave them $350 billion worth of weapons or cash.
Is Zelensky ready to give up?
Do you have a reaction to Virginia Guthrie's suicide in Australia?
Well, it's a very sad situation, the whole thing. That whole situation is very sad, her and others. And so certainly that's a horrible thing. Horrible.
One